Good one for the mayor to miss.
Lincoln County got its first marijuana application today.
Who was it?
Brittany?
Yes.
Are you in the train station?
I am not.
Are you at a concert?
Just a second, we're gonna. Okay. Should be good to go. It was, I can't think of the name now. Something culture. For the Lincoln County marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be a mile south and a mile west of
Just in time.
Remember Wild Wild
It's something for one of his licenses. We got to
Oh. I hope he calls if he.
Oh, yeah.
Troy and Mary, how are you guys? Good. Good? Good. Just waiting for a Steelers football game. And, can pretty much be assured you.
Daughter's building a house, huh?
Yeah, I hear you got some role with it. I just don't remember what it was. But.
Yeah, I talked to her the other night. So.
Yeah, cool. She was excited.
Yeah, that's good.
She's like, Riley Peters?
We don't have names. We're just
No, I know.
Does that ever?
I'm the same unnamed parent.
never goes away.
Yeah, that's pretty
You
funny.
just become the parent of some other kid.
Yeah, that helps.
It's like, oh, there's so-and-so.
What?
Right.
You write that stuff down for me.
I'm going to start writing it down
No, you're not.
in like multiple places.
Where did you write it down last time?
It's probably do that.
It's email.
What happened? Oh, you did?
It was mixed up with our stuff after the
4 minutes. Oh, the function over at the
yes, thank you.
cafeteria?
It is a serving spoon. Does not belong to us. It must be yours and most.
I don't turn down serving spoons.
You know what they say, you can never have too many services.
You know, you're screwed if you don't. There you sit. Down by a savage? Yes. If it says Cody's Smokehouse on the serving spoon, you go ahead and keep that. When you buy catering, when you buy catering. Yeah, I don't want to be like, no, this is one of caterer events that they provide all these things. No, but I did have a fine collection of small town bar glasses in my younger days. Those were fun. Phil's Pond, Little Colinga. Yeah, we'll look it up.
Sure you paid for one more.
Over and over.
Yeah, I got You're welcome.
But I'm here for
Stamp.
stays.
There you go.
We could have stayed. Everything went 2-2, so I'm staying.
That's the most tiebreakers we've ever needed.
Yeah, 2.5 years I've been on. It changed a lot. It's not that long.
Well, we had one talk.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions to the agenda?
One addition, item E under new business, 14U baseball discussion.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Visitors to be heard?
So I'm Mary Peters, and this is my husband Troy. And if you don't know us, we live way on the edge of the town, right close to the park there where you put in the sand volleyball courts. And we just want to come talk tonight a little bit about some concerns and questions we had about the volleyball courts. First of all, we want to say we do appreciate, we think it'll be a great thing to add to the community, and a lot of people will probably use it. But I don't know if people realize it, how much they visit or watch volleyball or sand volleyball, and the impact it could have on our yard and people going through it. We do not a ton, but we do get people that walk through our yard now to go to the park. Our driveway kind of ends, there's no sidewalk that continues if you know our part of town, and people will come up to our driveway and just cut straight across our lawn, which like I said hasn't been super frequently, and I probably only catch it in the summer when I'm around. Or we'll have kids ride through on their bikes, and I had to just, hey, can you stay off our property? But with the increase of traffic that it could cause with the volleyball courts, we were just kind of wondering and then asking questions if there's going to be any kind of barrier put up, with whether it's a net or a fence or anything on the property, like behind the court, so that we don't have to worry about balls coming into our yard. I know there is a gap between our house and the field, but I took my 14-year-old daughter out there the other day with the volleyball, and I know there's no nets, and I know obviously the point of volleyball is to get it, in the line, but she could easily hit it, and it would roll right down and climb right into our yard. So it's just a concern we have that, people will be chasing and running through our yard to get volleyballs.
Sure.
I don't know, like I said, I know it's obviously probably not going to happen until the spring when the nets go up, but that's why we wanted to come early to get you thinking about, what the plans are. We don't know if you're planning on having a league, what the hour. I know there's probably a lot of things that are still going into consideration with it, but we just kind of wanted to come and mention it so that you could get our input of, hey, we do have people that come through.
It's good timing, yeah. I
Yeah.
considered that.
And like I said, I know we put up a sign and things like that, but when I'm on attack,
Are you right in the north of where the courts are?
To the west.
Yes,
correct.
the blue house on the corner there.
Okay.
So, just something we wanted you to think about, that, like I said right now, there's not a lot of equipment in that park, so it doesn't always get used, but like I said, people do use our yard as a path to cut through it. And so,
And if you do start the league, we're wondering if there's hours.
yeah, like, what are going to
Compound
do,
that,
just
you
things
know.
like that, because it is more a residential area.
Right.
So just things that maybe you would think about, that we wanted you to think about before it became too late.
I think, don't our parks close at a certain time?
Yeah, I think West Ring closes at 11, but I don't think we have any lights out.
And there's no lights, so I'm not really worried about
Yeah,
any
I don't think we have much
lights
going
as
on
of right
there.
now, but I didn't know if that's
There's
something.
one by the shelter there.
Yeah, that stays on,
but-
but I didn't know if that was something where you can put lights, or you're gonna have a league. Like I said, all these things, maybe you haven't even thought of,
Yeah.
but we maybe want, my daughter played in a sand volleyball league this summer, and I can tell you, if you have any guys playing in it, the balls are gonna get hit a lot harder. They just are. I don't know if you've ever watched sand volleyball, but the sand stops you, but not a whole lot. My daughter can hit it to our house.
Yeah.
So I like the parking in front of our house, which we know people will use, and they'll just cut right across that. So at least there's maybe a way to get them to go around to use the sidewalk on the other side.
Cool. Yeah,
So-
that's definitely on on the list now for things to be considered.
Yeah, and the other thing with the parking pad there, and I think I've emailed Nate a little bit there, but that's just rock there right now. And I kind of actually take care of that. I actually work it up a couple times a year because it's weeds, nothing but weeds, and it's not mine. It's city property, and then we were talking a little bit back and forth. I don't mind taking care of it, but if it's not really mine, and I really don't have much to say with it, then maybe we need to do something different with it. Or, either somebody's gonna have to spray weeds there, or, like I said, maybe pave it or whatever, possibly, or whatever, that little stretch there.
Yeah, so that I just want to make a quick correction, that area where the rocks are along the east side of Cleveland, it's a county right of way. But we've worked with the county in terms of maintaining some of that area east of the fog line, so.
Yep, and the snow does not get moved there in the wintertime. It just piles up, so nobody takes care of the snow. And I can see why you can't take care of the snow, because if you push the snow, you'll pick up all the rocks and it'll just make a mess. And you can't push it south, it'll plug up the drains. You can't push it north, and you'll have rocks all in the drain in the north. So I think it's just been a problem for a lot of years, and nobody's really said anything about it. I think that when it rained so dang hard that time, you seen how far that drain, it came up the driveway, it just doesn't, and you were there.
All the way back up to Second.
You're right, yeah, and then all that debris comes down, it plugs up the drain, and then also all the dirt and everything. And I think Nate, you cleaned it off for me this summer, which is great.
Somebody that's skilled in the use of equipment.
But things like that, that's just concerns we have with that also, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's.
Yep, that's just it. Like I said, we thought we'd put it on the plate now before it gets to be spring and.
Hopefully, we gotta get some signs made to put up to keep up your property.
I think,
And it may not be a problem at all, but like I said, I know it happens on occasion now, so if the traffic becomes more,
Yeah,
it could be, so,
All right, thanks.
thanks.
thank you.
Appreciate the time, guys.
Thank you.
Move on to consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
One note, on the consent agenda for the city administrator's report, I did receive an email that I had been asked. We were asked if anybody wanted to join this new Lincoln County Financial Action Network, FAN, I think is what it's called. So Lincoln County is looking at their finances, trying to make recommendations for, maybe they need to make cuts, if they need to change something with taxes. This is based on this year's budget and some of the feedback they got, so. I'm supposed to be on that list to be presented to the commission tomorrow to be approved, or if anybody has any objections, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have the available time to do it?
Yeah, it looks like it'll be evenings for the most part, so.
So you have the time.
How long?
3 meetings in December right now. I know. 6, 13, and 30th, if I remember.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Let me bring something up here. Just curious, with Turner County expressing 11th hour interest in our ambulance district for additional coverage, how close to print was this? I read it yesterday. I don't know when this was made, if there's been any progress since.
Nothing new since. I did bring Mitch up to speed on it last week. How I left it with Turner County is I'll do it sooner rather than later, so we can, because it takes time to get that Turner County stuff put together. I think that's where the bulk of the effort on that resolution lies. So.
Right. Agreed.
I saw in your report that we interviewed some building code.
We did.
Is there any prospects?
Two evenings of interviews last week up in Hartford. I think both evenings went fairly well. We've got several folks that I think would be suited well to the position. So I'm supposed to connect with Teresa tomorrow and figure out what we want for next steps, see if we agree on who our chosen candidate would be. And I think we do. I think we have a good first pick and a good second pick. So I'd like to have that filled about 6 months ago.
Yeah. Anything else on the consent agenda?
Our city engineers report, we've got appointment updates and continued conversations with residents. Are we in good standing with all?
Yes, I would say so. Yep.
Good.
Everybody has some unique things to say about the project, but I think we're moving forward with everybody.
I've heard additional comments from people that have seen now some of the renderings, and they're super excited that we're going to actually incorporate more than just the utility of the roads. We actually have some beautification, so pretty cool to see it and hear all about it. Thank you.
Alright, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like liquor license, 2022 liquor license renewals.
Correct. We received all of the applicants have now sent in their applications. Every year we have a couple of latecomers, usually one of them in particular, but they did get it in. They're all complete and correct. We have no concerns with renewal, and we recommend a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Quick question on the, there's a syntax error on the application from one of the applicants, and they did not answer the question about a felony. And the only one? You have two different applications in there, one of
We have
them,
on sale and off sale.
right? But I'd like that to be rectified.
Both applications said the same.
Here, right here. All right, that's incomplete, but back on this page. Right here. It would have convicted the following no answer.
Oh, yeah, below D, below the box, on the, on the right-hand side.
Oh,
I don't know that that's a problem that they.
the state would probably. Yeah.
Right, so we might as well avoid a kickback
Absolutely.
later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we need to change the motion on that? Pending.
Yeah, pending proper completion on all that.
We wanna have that one separate?
I think we'll put them all together yet. Pending,
Completion of the application.
yeah, by the only one for with the offset. Onset,
On sale.
yeah. Does that make sense?
So is an off sale had it?
Offset has it,
Yeah,
on
she
sale.
just missed it.
Did she mark it yes or no?
She marked it no on
Can we just, or no?
No.
By all means.
What they
the
need.
perfect rule.
So she just needs to come down and check the box then.
You got it.
That's all she
Yeah.
does.
Okay.
Do I rescind my motion or
Revise.
revise my motion?
Good for pending on sale.
Most applications are complete and correct, and staff recommend motion to approve.
Motion to approve pending the
On sale.
on-sale
Completion, yeah.
completion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstain.
Riley.
Ordinance 630, cannabis establishment licenses.
Council, you'll remember that earlier this year we passed a temporary license or temporary ordinance with regard to licensing. Department of Health has now issued their rules, and so the time has come for us to update that ordinance and decide what we really want to do when it comes to licensing establishments. Initially, we were planning on licensing dispensaries only, but a number of communities are licensing all establishments. So whether you're cultivating, manufacturing, testing, or selling, you would still be required to have a license. So you go through the conditional use permit process, through planning and zoning, then you come to the city council for licensing, so on and so forth. Just a few highlights I think are really important. We don't have a cap on the number of cultivation, manufacturing, and testing facilities. But we do limit dispensaries to no more than 3. All establishments require a license, as I said. We established the right of entry and inspection as needed. So Chief Erickson and I believe it's really important for the police department, code official, and zoning administrator to have access to the building to make sure that they're in compliance at all times. Provides for suspension and revocation of licenses under certain requirements, and for violation penalties, and those violations are subject to our typical fine of $500 per day of violation. And we recommend a motion to approve the first reading.
And Brett went through this and he's good with it.
Gone back and forth quite a few times with staff in his office on a couple of things in terms of procedure. We've got a draft license application ready to roll. That is fairly simple, but gets all the information that we need.
Motion to approve.
With the right of entry and inspection as needed, how's that worded? Is there a notice that has to be given on the front side, or is it just whenever we feel like, or whenever someone feels like?
It's at our discretion.
And is that something that'll hold up?
The city attorney believes so, yes.
Because generally there's a process when you enter someone's property that you want to inspect, that you go through some form of non-harassment style authorization on the front side.
So when they apply for a license, they're certifying in that application that they'll, upon issuance, allow law enforcement and our employees access to the premises and buildings for the purpose of inspection.
Good.
And to the applicant's below dealing with sale and ownership of the establishment. So that's just to make sure that, if when they apply, they have to list whoever's on the board of directors, any ownership interest, all that has to be disclosed. If we were to examine those records and find that somebody else was on that ownership record, that's a big deal. Because that's the same with these licenses, you go through that felony process with these licenses as well. So.
Good. I just didn't want to get ourselves into a bit of trouble if it was spelled out. So.
I can reconfirm with the city attorney if you wish, and make sure that he feels that we're on the right track there. And if so, we can. If not, we can revisit it.
I would like to have the confirmation if you could. That would be wonderful. I just don't want a problem.
We have a motion, right? Is there a second? I don't know if there's a second now.
There was not a second.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Brittany, are you getting any of this?
She's been on mute the whole time. I'm glad you've been able to come along with us, Brittany.
Was that an aye in favor or aye opposed?
We can confirm later.
It was in favor.
Okay.
I in favor.
All right.
Thank you.
C, authorize advertisement for South Main, South Ash Street asphalt project.
Meeting, just had to put this on the agenda so that we could re-advertise the project from last year, the South Main Street project and the Ash Street project. The same bid package, hoping to have more interest from contractors. Talked about possibly packaging it with pointing, but being that it's heavy asphalt project, we think it would be, and pointing's leaning towards a concrete street, I think it'd be good to get this one out on the street.
Do we want to list South Main as a concrete option?
We don't have that built into the project, and if we wanted to do that, we'd have to.
I wonder if it wouldn't be a bad idea to at least have an option thrown out there for a bid.
What would we be looking at in terms of price difference estimate?
Should find out for you.
I mean, I get the feeling with the way things have gone, that seems to be a path that we send heavy equipment and trucks down a lot, and school buses all go there.
It's an industrial street. That makes sense.
Yeah. Then we can look at that. Right now, we're not planning to take out any of the curbs, so that would have to come out in this thing. So we'd have to kind of overhaul our plans to maybe do that. How about I just start out with an estimate for you to review?
Yeah.
So you guys can make a decision. Because I'd rather you decide.
If we can amend the bid, or the notice to bid too, can we?
Yeah. I think I'd rather us decide whether we're going to do concrete or asphalt, rather than let it be a big option on there. And all
Sure.
that can confuse
But if it's all concrete and Whiting's concrete, we could then do the.
Yeah, then I would look at putting them together.
Right.
Then ash would be just a little tiny project.
Yeah,
And that could be.
well, I would still put ash in there and then just do that project too at the same time.
It'd be pretty tough to make a call one way or the other without getting some kind of numbers on the concrete project.
Yeah, we've seen enough bids that we can dial it in for you, so that you'll have a pretty reliable number to make your decision.
Sounds good.
I'll work with you, Nate, on it.
When do you think Boynton will go out to bid again?
Right now, we're shooting for February.
January.
December?
That's what I got.
We're planning to have our plans done by the end of the year, and we have to send them to the state for review. They've been taking about a month to get through, and then we have an advertising process that takes about a month before we can bid, so that's kind of the schedule that we're on there.
I think it's fair to say that Mitch is being pushed to bid as early as humanly possible on this project by multiple people.
Yeah, and if the only thing that really is probably a risk out there, I'd say, of delaying that is just the property negotiations and stuff. I mean, they've been going well, but until people actually sign on the dotted line and we have all that in hand, and that's the only thing that's maybe could change any of that, I guess, at this point.
I guess we're looking for a motion to authorize that, or just
I think we'll table it.
table it
Yeah.
until,
Motion to table.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm motioning in favor, aye.
Thanks, Brittany.
Mitch, we had talked about going concrete, or at least having concrete options on a lot of our projects going forward. When did we decide we weren't doing that with South Main? Did I miss that?
Well, South Main, we've been looking at more as a maintenance, because of the roads already, it's really just the asphalt that's kind of wearing out on us.
Okay.
We talked about it last year, but we were trying to race our plans out that we really didn't have time to look at that, I guess, and bring that in, but we've got time now, so we can sure take a look at that.
Good deal.
I'm guessing either way, the subsurface is gonna have to be
Yeah.
dug out.
Yep.
It's pretty soft evidently underneath there.
Yep.
Definitely, I mean, I think our biggest concern is those southbound lane. But you never know until you get under there.
Yeah.
You know, we get plenty of surprises when we pull asphalt up, so.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Mitch.
Yep.
Approve Lennox Volunteer Fire Department roster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm in favor, I'm just delayed, sorry.
14U baseball discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get in front of this a little bit. I watched the Park and Rec meeting last night, and looks like they made a recommendation to update our policies and change some things on the 14U baseball. You were there, do you kind of want to speak to what they're doing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of debate, and they were really torn on which way to go, and I think what ultimately pushed them in the direction that they took was, Steve indicated that 12U and under kind of has a more defined rec league that they deal with. They call it the prairie grass, and it's a little more apples to apples in the competition that you're playing, and apparently in the 14U that doesn't exist, and they struggled with that decision, and that was kind of the direction that since 12U and under had more of a league, a rec league, where the 14U didn't, they deemed that maybe it was appropriate. Obviously there's a lot of discussion back and forth, and there's pros and cons from different points of view. They really want to make sure that the kids, that everyone that wants to participate in rec opportunity, and they struggled with, well, if they force the competitive team to be independent, would that actually deter less participation? But then they said if they kept them all the same, then you're struggling where, you have competitive kids with non-competitive kids, and then both of them get frustrated. So
I would say we have that issue at every level.
yeah,
So,
no, I agree.
I mean, I would say it's probably more prevalent at the younger ages than it is at the 14U level.
Sure.
I went round, when I was on the Park and Rec board, I went round and round with Jason Foss about this, and John Kirshner.
Yep.
And the reason I wanted this added on here is because we're gonna have to change policy language, Nate's gonna have to rewrite something. So if we can just figure something out, because we'll have to approve it.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think the park board is torn. Like, honestly, they're not. There wasn't a heavy consensus or a heavy this is what we want to do. They were debating and kind of at a whim said, let's just let them do it. And
So history on that. We've had some issues before the Park and Rec board was created, where people were trying to do this, and our numbers were low. There's a group of kids, I don't know how many years ago they graduated, but the Lennox kids all wanted to play together, one or two teams or one team, and they kicked the less talented kids to another team and kicked the Chancellor kids to Chancellor. When we get up to 14U to 16U baseball, and all of a sudden we don't have a team because all of the fringe kids at whatever age were kicked to the curb.
yeah,
And the kids they didn't want ended up going to a state baseball tournament. The kids that they didn't want to have on their team.
yeah. So I mean, the park board definitely wants to inclusive. They want to have.
But here's what will happen. If you take the most talented 12 kids out of a group of 36, the other 20, however many of them, are going to have zero fun and zero joy in playing baseball. At that level, it is impossible to play baseball without kids that can pitch, hit, and throw. At least some of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion, and there was different points of view than that. That if those kids were more equally talented, but then it was like, who are they going to play? So we don't want them playing the A team from T.
And just get them beat.
And getting smoked, yeah.
The next question you need to look at is, so typically, the group of people whose kids are a little more talented are typically the ones that volunteer to coach. And now we have our 14U, the other 14U children that may or may not have somebody that knows how to coach them. Trying to coach kids that maybe aren't as athletic or quote unquote good as the other kids. And now what do? That's where I struggle with it.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between a 13-year-old kid who hasn't gone through puberty and a 14-year-old kid that's gone through puberty. You don't know if the 13-year-old kid in 3 years is going to be better than the 14-year-old kid.
Right.
I just think in my opinion, our program isn't broken. We've had a lot of success doing it the way it's been done. I mean, how many years ago did we win a Legion State tournament? 2. So why is this group of 14-year-olds, why do we need to do this for them?
So the reason why it was brought up to me at one point is the numbers are getting larger. And trying to split up these 36 kids, you've got 3 different teams. Where at 30 kids, you have 2 different teams, which gives you the ability to have more talented players mixed in amongst 2 teams instead of diluted across 3 teams.
They go 2 teams.
Well, and that is part of the solution, is you look at how you do that. So what I had a discussion about was considering a varsity JV style instead of 13U, 14U. And as you see in high school, kids that are JV aspire to make their way to varsity, whether it's this season or next. It's a progression. And coaches use those last 3 or 4 positions on the team kind of swing with the top 3 or 4 positions on the JV and mix them in and incorporate them and keep team building and some team chemistry. So I thought that sounded like a solution that would allow some more competitive play while not losing the interest of what you referred to, the fringe players that maybe haven't hit testosterone yet. That's huge. I've watched a lot of 13-year-olds turn into pretty dominant 16-year-olds because they hit the gym, got testosterone, and all of a sudden that guy who was a horse at 13 and didn't,
Yeah, I used to see it all the time.
right by him. So I
Of
want
our
a system.
36 players, you're talking JV, varsity, and we're talking 3 teams, so then we have a C team
Yeah.
to try to get to JV.
Correct.
I mean, that's,
My next question is, so if we allow this to happen at 14U baseball, who's to say, I don't wanna do it at 10U baseball for my kid? We don't wanna play in the prairie grass league. I'm just playing devil's advocate of people out there.
Right, and the answer to that is simple. The field changes. And when the field changes, the game changes. And you go from playing a kid pitching at 40 feet away, 45 feet away, is a lot different than a kid pitching at 60 feet away. Exactly. A kid throwing though from 90-foot bases, third base to first base is a completely different deal. A kid running the outfield on the big field is a completely different deal. So having a rec league for 10, 12, which we've established, and like you said, we've got a very good history of success in that, in developing talent, in having kids interested in playing ball, in building teams of kids that want to play with each other, not just making one great team and the rest can fend for themselves. That's awesome on the little field. It changes when you go to the big field because communities that we see have merged their programs into one team. And that's what they're faced with meeting right now is we get a third of our squads, 3 different teams, facing the best that Parkston has to offer, the best that T has to offer, the best that Harrisburg has to offer.
But then don't we also have the opportunity to play the less talented teams from T?
And that's what JV and C accomplish for you.
I don't know if they have, I don't know if other towns have that.
They don't.
I think the reason
They
why,
said T only had one, Canton only has one.
I think the reason why other towns only have one and why
It's
they're
because they
getting
run
this,
all the kids.
yeah,
Right.
because they're not as good a program.
And I love our numbers. I got complimented so many times from so many different other community members about our program in Lennox because you guys, you don't have more people than we do, but you got so many more kids playing ball.
I've gotten compliments on
Bill, can I interrupt you for a second?
You just did.
So I want to say something just on that comment right there, our numbers. We run a very successful baseball program. You just said it. All of the towns wonder why our program is so successful. It's because it's well run. And so the other thing is we have to look, the mission of our rec program is for the kids to play baseball. It's recreation league. It's not competitive. That's why we have the competitive league, so then those kids have that opportunity to play competitively. Those kids can also drive 20 minutes away and play on a competitive team if they choose to, but they're choosing to stay in Lennox and play on the rec team. So what I struggle with is if this is such an issue, but they're still coming here and they're playing with us. And so I struggle with this. I think, my kids are kids that have been left behind, so to speak. And they've lost interest in those sports, unfortunately, because they know that. They know they're left behind. And I get it. There's kids that are more skilled. I understand that. But they see it. And so now if they do end up, getting more testosterone, being better, my kids aren't going to be tall, but if something like that would happen and they would be more athletic, they're no longer interested. And so that's where I really struggle with that. Just wanted to add a little bit to the discussion.
It's good. I mean, it's good dialogue, it's good points.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I think it's a big, you talk about difference in fields, I think that weighs into this thing too. Because your stronger kids typically are going to be your 14-year-olds. That's their first experience on a big field as a 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So all your big arms more likely are going to be
on the
on the
12.
right.
And then you're gonna go to a baseball game and have a C team game, and you're gonna have your 27th best pitcher run out there and expected to perform, when he's not probably ever, no matter what happens to him physically, never gonna be a pitcher. The thing about baseball, in my opinion, is it's the most individualized team sport. If you're the best pitcher in the state and and you got 8 worst guys behind you, you can still dominate that game and win that game for your team. I mean, that's what I struggle with.
I mean, I completely agree with you. Some of the other, I guess, counterpoints that they were making last night was, okay, what if you're one of those fringe players? If you're split evenly, you're never gonna shine. You're never gonna be the leader of the team. Where when you kind of are appropriately grouped, then it lets those kids step up and be leaders and play shortstop and things like that. Where they
But
don't
we're a
get
rec program. Our kids should be playing. All of our kids should have the opportunity to play.
Sure. I'm not saying I agree or disagree
No,
with
I
you.
know.
I'm just bringing some of the points that were brought up.
Catching is a huge thing at that.
Yeah, we're not gonna have 3 catchers.
Right.
We're not gonna have
Yep.
3 guys that can play shortstop. I mean, yeah, it's great for the 12 kids to get to play that. I mean, quite frankly, I don't think I would worry about it with Ace, because I go out and play catch with Ace. I mean, that's where you get the coaching that's gonna go with their 12 kids, and now our last 12 kids are gonna end up with, like, Brittany coaching them. We struggle to find coaches.
I heard that.
It was an example.
The conversation was quite rich when I had it with the gentlemen that were passionate about this. And one of the comments was, they need to keep their own kids engaged, because when they're the only 1 or 2 players on the team that can get anything done, they get frustrated and they lose interest. And that was their counterpoint to the dilution of talent.
I mean, you and I coached this level with the same situation, basically.
Yep.
I mean, what's different between, I don't think our group is that much more talented than this group.
3 teams versus
But we were
2.
all,
That's the difference.
So you take 1.5 quote unquote good players and distribute them amongst a team.
Well, the immediate solution is 2 teams with these groups. Those are out ungodly numbers, 18 kids a team.
well, 2 teams.
It's unfair to them too, because then the playing time dwindles and they don't get to play as much. And
Well, that's what we ran into with 2 teams when you and I were coaching that level. I mean, you had, I think, 15 or 16 per team at that at our situation.
And my next question is, what happens when we get into it to these competitive kids want to go and play 35 baseball games, 17 of which are at home, and then the C team does more practice and they play 5 home games, and now we have all of this money everyone pays the same dollar amount, and now the less talented kids' parents are supporting the dreams of the more talented kids to pay for umpires, baseballs, lights, all of those things too. Sure. I mean, to me,
it gets too specialized.
We have a scheduling issue the way it is
Right.
on the big field.
Right.
well, these are 14-year-old kids. I asked the park and rec manager, I asked Hale, how many games did they play? They played 8 games last year. The travel team did at the end of the season. Which to me, if you play 12 baseball games at 14 years old with your buddies, and you go and play 8 competitive games, I mean, in my opinion, at that age, they need to practice more than they play.
Right.
I mean, they need to go play catch, they need to play wiffle ball. The solution always isn't more games and more competition. Sometimes the simple solution is get better, like help each other get better. So I would not be in favor of changing the policy. I'll go University on record to say that.
Where's the board? What did the park and rec board push forward last night?
they recommended going forward with the change.
Because if this gets done, it will open up a can of worms in every other program we have. Because now, Trey wants to play soccer. Well, Trey's a little more advanced than Griffin, so I'm going to take those 8 kids, and I don't want him on my team anymore. I mean, I don't know how you stop it. We've set precedents now that we're no longer a recreational program, and you
can't say, well, we're only doing that for this group. I mean, we have to be fair to all of the kids.
Yeah.
So if a 10U coach comes and says, you know what, we're not gonna play prairie grass this year, we're gonna schedule our own games, I want these 12 kids, I want to have tryouts, take the best 12 and do that, how do we say no?
Get sticking.
Yeah, very sticky.
I think it just causes
It's, like Sam said, it's the same situation that we faced when
Yeah.
we coached at this level. Is we want engagement because our strength is all these boys that want to play baseball.
Yeah.
And having them come enjoy learning the game, having friends that they get to spend time with in the summertime, that was where everything was at. You know, the kids that were fighting to get better and seeing them get a hit and all of their team freaking out for them, that's stuff these boys never will forget. And it's also how friendships get even more solidified.
And that's where they become the star. I mean, we had a kid on our 10U team. He got on base once by getting hit with a ball. You would have thought we won the World Series. Those kids were excited for him because he got to run the bases.
No, and that was the whole theory behind our entire rec existence.
And I just think the way our high school, you know, with the program that's been built and how the high school team performs year in, year out, top talent, we're always right there on the cusp of winning the state tournament. Our Legion teams, I mean, it works. I don't understand why we're trying to fix something that isn't broken. At the end of the day, the whole point of our program was to push enough kids into our Legion program to make it work. And I think if we do this, I think it'll cost us kids.
We don't want that.
No.
Not at all. And Brittany, you summed it up perfectly, what the mission of the rec program is. Yeah, that speaks volumes.
I just didn't want Nate to waste his time writing up a change of policy if we weren't gonna be on board with it, because that's what had to happen to come to us.
When is this coming forward to the board? Any idea?
Well,
They passed it last night.
yeah, so the park board, moved it forward last night as a recommendation. When we carry those things out, we need to have a policy change. So what we'll likely do is draft policy, bring it back to the park board, and make sure that it's consistent with their wishes. And if so, then we'll bring it to the city council for consideration. When it has to be all wrapped up and done, I think probably January, based on when we start registrations.
Yeah, looking at their agenda, that's when they start rolling it out.
Yeah,
We'll have to roll with this quick.
maybe even before the first of the year.
Right.
Yep. In a perfect world, the park board will consider that policy change at their December meeting.
Billy, any thoughts?
I like if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, just listen to all the back and forth and on that one. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Chad, you were at the meeting last night, hearing all the back and forth here and there, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I think they're teetering either way. I don't think it would take much to push them one way or the other, and if we have enough conviction with some people that have been through the program and give a little more. There wasn't honestly a lot of personal experience present at the meeting that have experienced this.
Yeah, most of the board now is a lot of younger kids that haven't been.
And there's only 4 members at the meeting last night, so they weren't fully represented either. So I mean, I think they are willing to have a conversation and you know, they want what's right for the rec program. So I do know that. They're not looking to shake things up because they want to do something new. They're trying to make everyone happy with what they're trying to do, what's best for the kids, and they see the point of view from both sides, and they were struggling with it, to be blunt.
And the worst part is you'll never make everyone happy.
No, you won't really.
No, we're not gonna. All right, anything for exec?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure we have some resolution on moving forward with this. Is this something that the council wants to take its course at this point? Draft the policy, take it back to park board, and we're discussing there?
Can we make a motion to have them reconsider, and if they still want to push it forward with a little more commentary? I don't know.
I think we're just looking for a consensus, right? Like what we want you to do?
There's some direction that we're going to need as staff to carry out some sort of policy change or non-policy change.
I would be a no vote. I don't think the policy needs to be changed.
On there too.
I wouldn't change the policy.
I don't have a vote.
You don't have a vote. That's negative.
I mean, I'll abstain since I was there and I listened to the conversation, but, you know, from just listening to your guys' point of view, I would tend to agree that why change it?
Brittany, the floor is yours.
I don't know if you heard me, but I also disagree with changing the policy, and I think maybe if some of this information went back to the board, there's a lot of experience on the council from Park and Rec and from older kids that maybe doesn't exist on that Park and Rec board, and I think that that's valuable information that they maybe just didn't have last night to have some of those good conversations. So I think it would be in their best interest just to hear kind of what our comments are. I don't know, Nate, if you can just tell them that I think what I heard from the room was pretty unanimous, that we recommend that the policy not change, and then just see, I mean, they can still move forward with a policy change that then comes to us in December or January if they so choose to do that.
Yeah, I think they'd have to have a presence at a council meeting probably, or a joint meeting of some sort to discuss it further. I mean,
So what I'm jotting down is I'm going to draft a policy, and I think this can be simple enough for the board, for the park board on December 3 or the December meeting. But along with that, a recommendation from the council that they reconsider this policy change.
That's the proper course of action. Thanks, Nate.
And then we'll have to make sure we reflect that in that. So
I was just gonna say.
it's not a vote, it's simply a recommendation. The sense of the council that it should be reconsidered.
So you are gonna take the time to rewrite the policy even though.
As simply as we possibly can.
That's his job, unfortunately, once we have a subcommittee that makes
it's
a
gonna have to,
recommendation.
yeah, he has to do it either way.
Right, that's just,
I didn't know that, sorry.
It's,
thank God Nate doesn't.
we've written a few policies in the time I've been here.
Are you gonna declare it today?
Yes, we do need executive.
So I need to make a,
Motion to go in, yeah.
I need a
Motion to go to executive session.
Second.
executive session 7:47.